Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Come to the show. We about to chop it up. Come to the show. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about. Chop it up. Chop it, chop it, chop it up. Chop it up. Chop it. We got some things we can talk about.
You are now tuned in to the Chop Shop with your host, Pastor Marvin McKenstry Jr. Let's chop it up.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Chop Shop. As always, we are blessed and privileged to bring you another great episode of the Chop Shop. And tonight, y'all, we're going to be doing what we do, talking about what's important to Baltimore as we look into the vacant house crisis first, and then we're going to be talking about the need for economic development, even as it pertains to its contribution to the spiritual growth and development of our communities. And we have two dynamic, amazing guests that are going to be with us. But before we get to that, I got to say thank you tonight. He's going to stay off screen. My right hand and my left hand, my main man, Mr. Shaka, Pitts on the ones and twos, always making the magic happen. Techniques 1200s, because anything else is uncivilized. Shaq, bro, you know I love you. He's doing well, y'all. Just got a little bit of a toothache. I don't want nobody to get alarmed. My man is standing strong as always, y'all. I'm watching what's developing in this city, and it is so interesting to me, y'all. I don't know if you're paying attention to the news, but there are so many different developing stories, and now we see the ongoing saga after Baltimore overwhelmingly voted for Question K. We talked to my man Giovanni Patterson last week, and City Council President tried to come in with a mulligan and get pensions out of 8 years of part-time work. And when that was vetoed by the mayor, now Councilman Ryan Dorsey, one of those guys who runs in a district where he's rarely, if ever, run against or challenged credibly by an opponent, is now trying to get the repeal, literally suggesting that people were ignorant to what they voted for. He's getting some support from some other councilmen. Y'all, listen, I need us to make sure that we are focused on being an informed voter base. Above and beyond identity politics and popularity, let's be an informed voter base, because we have some major issues in Baltimore that don't have resolution or legislation, and yet we are seeing the driving push towards what brings about comfort for our elected officials. We have got to insist that we have people that govern towards what's best for Baltimore, not towards what's best for their personal and individual futures. I'm just over it. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but man, this thing has got to stop. All right, with that being said, y'all, we're going to transition right into these church announcements tonight. We got the Stop the Beef hotline, and on the Stop the Beef hotline, when you dial 443-431-3705 or 443-522-7848, a man on the other end is going to answer the line. We're going to find out where you at, what the scenario or the situation is, and we're going to deploy strong resources, the resources of strong men who care enough about this city to do everything from provide mediation services all the way up until paying off bills if it means preserving a life. We need everybody that knows anybody that's involved in a situation like this to reach out to the Men of the We Are Us movement. And walking side by side with the Stop the Beef hotline always is the Baltimore Peace Agreement. It is making its rounds, 10 points of people who are saying, even if I got to eat in the streets, I don't have to die or kill in the streets. And we need everybody. If we have not had the Baltimore Peace Agreement come to your community, I need you to reach out to the Men of the We Are Us movement. We will come, we will serve in your community, and we will make sure that we are engaging those people who are at the highest threat of violence, y'all. Those who are at the highest threat to commit violence or to be a victim. And we're going to get them to sign off on these 10 points. Employee Baltimore show happening every Thursday at 1 p.m. Today, we played a playback, a replay, a throwback, but still nonetheless valuable, relevant information. Join yours truly as I host the Employee Baltimore show, talking to some of Baltimore's driving employers, y'all. We talking to some of Baltimore's driving employers, making sure that opportunity is meeting the people of Baltimore right where they are. Victory House Worship Center Church, Sundays at 10 a.m., where I have the privilege of being the pastor. This week, I'm going to sit it down a little bit. I'm actually sitting it down for the rest of the year, because this week I'm gonna be sitting down, and four of our amazing leaders is gonna be bringing the word of God. I think we got a flyer on that you're gonna see in a minute. But come on through, support them, and then the following week is gonna be our Youth Sunday. On Christmas Day, we coming in. Our youth are gonna do some presentations, and we gonna get you back home to your family, y'all. But we cannot not come in the house on a Sunday when it's the time that we're celebrating the coming and arrival of our Christ. All right, this coming Friday, y'all, comedy and karaoke featuring Stiletto, the comedian, and we going to, of course, and y'all see it right there on the screen because we want you to come and bring your best effort to sing your favorite song. And we gonna do something tonight. Tonight we are giving away tickets. It's not competitive. It's not anything. All you have to do is get in the comments throughout the show. Tag your friends, get them to come in the comments and simply say, I want a ticket. It's that simple. Why are we just giving away tickets if they cost $10? Because we've been so abundantly blessed with donations. Y'all, we've been so abundantly blessed with donations in this effort that we actually have some tickets that we're able to share with the community. So I want us to have some people in the house to be able to use these tickets and utilize these tickets. Y'all make sure that y'all get in the comments tonight and just simply say, I want to come to the comedy and karaoke show, or I want to see Stiletto, or whatever suits you the best. And we gonna make sure that we get you connected. I believe the person that's in charge of them tickets is going to be on with us tonight, watching throughout the show to make sure that you get your ticket. All right, y'all. With that being said, it's time for us to get into what we came for. I'm ultra excited about this first guest because she's my sister. We met doing some really, really meaningful work. What a lot of people didn't realize about the uprising is that West Baltimore was left to figure out things for themselves. It was a national story, a citywide this and that or the other. But the people that had to live through the accountability building and healing of the Western District was people like myself and my guest tonight. And we met in those spaces, y'all. And I found out quickly that she was a dynamic young woman who cared a lot about this city, who cared about the legacy of the people in this city, as well as the future of this city with her investment in young people. She is the face and the voice of Fight Blight Baltimore. If you haven't seen her, she'll be walking along places where the city, be it slumlords or city properties, and it's neglect, right? Live showing you the damage and holding everybody from city leaders to those who should be accountable for those things accountable. She is the one and only my friend and my sister of Fight Blight Baltimore, Nneka Nnamdi. How you doing, Nneka?
Hey everybody.
Nneka,
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Before we get into this conversation, because I'm chomping at the bit, this is like one of you have a few lanes, but this is one of your lanes, and I know you're gonna lay it down. But before we get to that, I try my best to bring them out better than Steve Harvey, but give the people a little bit of background information so they know who you are. And you do have an amazing story here, right in Baltimore City.
Sure. So again, I'm Nneka Nnamdi. I'm the founder of Fight Blight Bmore and the co-creator of the Stop Oppressive Seizures Fund, among many other hats or skirts or shoes that I wear. But in this context, I'm really here to talk about our work in community to build community. And when we're talking about building community, we're really talking about building the people and the institutions, businesses, spaces and places that support human life, right? A lot of times when people think about community development, they're really talking about real estate development. They're talking about the development of buildings, but where our focus is really on developing people and communities and supporting people and communities to bring into existence what they want to see in community instead of the blighted conditions that exist in many of our neighborhoods. And when we're talking about blight, we're talking about vacant properties, abandoned properties, dilapidated properties, properties that are either underutilized or misutilized. So those are the 5 classes of blight that we identify and that we work with people in community to try to understand, but also to try to resolve.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to jump right to what caused me to reach out to you. We saw that there's a major lawsuit that's being filed against the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, consistent with the loss of life. And we do send our hearts and our prayers continually out to those three firefighters and to their families, understanding that the loss of life under any circumstances, especially when you're valiantly serving the community, is just unacceptable. However, what we didn't want is there to be a detractor away from the reality that of the 15,000 vacant homes in Baltimore City, the concentration are in Black communities. And we wanted to bring your voice on because while everybody will talk about the loss of life, the firefighters, they'll talk about that Stricker Street situation in isolation. You have been beating the drum, and we need to understand what this really means to our community. Help us by giving us a little bit of the background and the work that you've been doing already to keep attention on the situation in Baltimore.
So first, I'd like to just bring into our minds that you're right. The loss of life is completely unacceptable. And so there was a elderly gentleman, Mr. Thomas Lemon, who back in 2016 lost his life sitting in his car when a vacant building basically imploded and the bricks, fell on top of his car and killed him. So for a lot of people, the loss of life of the firefighters was their first understanding of how blight actually kills people. But to be clear, blight has been killing people in neighborhoods, in the Black Butterfly, and elsewhere, and other jurisdictions that had issues with blight long before the Stricker Street fire. And it's unfortunate that it has taken, the additional loss of life in order to elevate the conversation surrounding blight in Baltimore. And so really, when we're thinking about how we get to a Stricker Street fire, we really have to go all the way back to, Ordinance 610 in 1910. We have to go all the way back to the codification of residential housing segregation in Baltimore, and understanding that was the first codification of segregation in the whole entire United States. And then we have to look at and talk about single family zoning and how that was put into place to keep people from having access to keep Black people from having access to particular neighborhoods. Then there are restrictive covenants. And we can draw a whole historical line through, block busting, steering, subprime lending, tax sale. All of these things are policies at the state, local, and federal level that enable or cause communities to not have the appropriate investment. And when you don't have the appropriate investment and you don't also have the appropriate the appropriate values being placed on particular communities, then people aren't able to keep their houses in good condition. They aren't able to have the economic wherewithal to pay their property taxes, which is what happened with the Stricker Street house. In fact, the original owners thought that they had lost the house to tax sale foreclosure. And so they thought that their hands were clean and clear. But however, the city, did not hold either the original homeowner or the tax certificate purchaser accountable to keeping that property in good condition. So all in all, we have to look at all of these policies that have contributed to poor economic outcomes in the Black Butterfly, specifically, lowered home equity and those, lack of workforce development, lack of educational opportunity, all of those things that make it difficult for people to earn a living that will enable them to keep their property in good condition.
One of the major contributors to crime is blight in the community. And I'm sorry, y'all, my voice getting over a little something. And there was a recent study done to show that when we talk about some of the violent crime that we're talking about, and the big three right now is non-fatal shootings, fatal shootings, and carjackings, they all happen, and this is crazy, within 0 to 100 feet not yards,
Mhm.
0 to 100 feet of vacant and blighted communities. Talk to us and help us to unpack a little bit about that crime and the contributor that this particular situation is to it.
So, in fact, when you look at the murders that have happened to date in Baltimore in 2023, 55 or so percent of them happen within 100 feet of a property that either has a vacant building notice, is a vacant lot, or has an active or has some sort of tax certificate, a tax lien attached to it. And really the correlation, because we don't quite know whether it's a causation or correlation, but the correlation has to do with the economic conditions where you have lack of housing stability, when you have a lack of housing affordability, when you have a lack of anything, that is going to impact how people house themselves, you're going to have all of the other social disparities, including people turning to crime, if that's a appropriate term, in order to be able to meet their economic needs so that they can provide food, clothes, and shelter for themselves. Jokingly, I think DMX said in the song, like, thou shalt not kill, but I will to eat. Like, these are very real needs. And when
I think
people,
it's sorry to cut you off, but I think it's important that we talk about that because we've literally heard traditionally that people are a product of their environment, right? But this kind of brings it home a little bit more because in that we don't normally hear the conversation where the need is fueling it. It's normally kind of said in the opposite, where the community has the need because of the high crime rate, and all of that sort of thing is drive when really it's the exact opposite in
right,
the home of redlining.
right, the policies create the conditions, and then the conditions create the behaviors in the people. So if you put any people anywhere in subject to the conditions that you see in many neighborhoods in Baltimore, you're going to have the same outcomes. And it's key to note that if you go back and actually look at the broken windows study, what it actually said is that property owners needed to be held accountable to keeping their properties in good conditions, because when you don't, it creates an environment where people are going to behave in a particular way. And instead of holding property owners accountable, instead of creating pathways for property owners who might be struggling to keep their properties in good condition and hold those that are wealthy, that are holding properties for tax purposes, to hold them accountable, the broken window study was used to pathologize and criminalize Black people. In the same way that we've come to this notion that people are a product of their environment without connecting the realities that the policies create the environment. Policy is the reason why property taxes are how schools are funded. And if property taxes are how schools are funded, and you spent 5 decades depopulating particular neighborhoods, driving down the property tax base, then there's no wonder that Baltimore City Public Schools was underfunded and thereby not able to provide young people with the education necessary to go out and be able to navigate a world where you have to earn money in order to meet your basic needs. So it's all of these things are connected.
I want you to unpack that a little bit more for me because we hear about the 40% decline in population where Baltimore was once 1 million people and now it's a little less than 600,000 people, and how we immediately, because we watch Fox, right, and we hear this and we think politicians only, we hear crime, Black on Black violence, right? How much of this is because it's connected to the broader Baltimore, the Port of Baltimore, and which is a place where it's still very difficult for Black people to go and get a job and living wage. But I'm gonna let you unpack it. Talk to us about how the bigger picture, how we shouldn't fall into the narratives that it's really about Black on Black crime and it's about Black politicians, even if those are contributors. that is so much more to what creates these conditions?
Right. Well, number one, the conditions you see in Baltimore today are the result of decisions made 100 years ago. Right. So that's number one. And if we think about who was in power politically 100 years ago in Baltimore, it was not Black people. Right. Not at all. But if you also look, the population decline in Baltimore starts really in about 1960. And the largest group of people who have left Baltimore were white people. Now, if we think about what was happening in Baltimore and in the US during the 1960s, it's very clear how Baltimore begins to lose its population. It's simple that at the time where the Supreme Court says you have to desegregate schools, it's the same time that white folks say, oh yeah, I'm out of here. I'm moving to Baltimore County, right? I'm going to use my GI Bill, right, that I earned in World War II, and I'm going to move to Baltimore County because we no longer can restrictive covenant. We no longer can do this, that, and the other. But what we can do is, because we have this economic advantage, is we can leave the city so that our children do not have to go to school with them. And that begins the decline of Baltimore's population. And, again, there were Black folks who leveraged their, new access into the economic spaces that were, with civil rights opening up particular jobs, particularly in the government, like Social Security, who also then followed white folks into Baltimore County. Then, of course, you mentioned the port, you have deindustrialization. And if we think about, again, the time period when major American cities, port cities, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, start to lose their blue collar jobs, it's in the late 60s, early 70s, just as Black people are able to start entering the unions in larger numbers. Corporate America decides to move the factories to the global South, so they're able to exploit the land and Black and brown labor in ways that they were no longer able to exploit them here. So then you have deindustrialization. Then in the 70s, you have and through the 80s, you have disinvestment. The Reagan comes into power, you start to have disinvestment. Then between Nixon's war on poverty and Reagan's war on drugs, which were essentially war on Black people, poor people, you can see how Baltimore, by policy, begins to fall into the decline. Again, these decisions, the policies are 50 and 100 years old. And that's not to say that Black politicians don't have a responsibility today to be accountable, right? You've decided to enter into these spaces and be a representative of people in the government. So you're responsible for redressing these policies and dealing with the impacts of them today.
I want you, while we're here, because I think that when we only address the problem and don't really come to some solutions, I want you to take some time to talk to Black Baltimore as a constituency in general, because I think that we're starting to see some of the ills leak into areas of Baltimore that have not been predominantly Black. So it's everybody's problem at this point. What should we be doing, and what steps or strategic moves are available to be made to fight blight in Baltimore?
So first of all, I think it's really key that one of the key components of Fight Blight Bmore is to really understand how we got here. And yes, we have to talk about the problem. I think it's key for people, though, to really take a look at the timeline and to take a look at the history of policy in Baltimore. And that's the first step. And then after you've, familiarized yourself with that piece, then it's about engaging and organizing with others in your community or in other communities. And so that could look like anything from, participating and figuring out what's happening with the work of Renters United. That could look like, working with and joining the Farm Alliance and engaging with the urban farmers who are bringing, attempting to bring more robust, hyper-local food system in Baltimore. Because again, if somebody is hungry, they will make choices that they would not otherwise make in order to feed themselves and their family. It means understanding if you have a family home in Baltimore, making sure that the elders that live in those family homes have properly positioned them for generational wealth transfer and for aging in space. So that could mean working with them to help them get a whole home grant, to install rails, to install windows, to install doors, so they're able to stay in the house and that the house stays in good condition. It could mean supporting inclusionary housing legislation. It really means getting involved and getting engaged in any of the things, any of the activities that are going to lead toward housing stabilization, that are going to lead toward hyperlocal food, they're going to lead toward appropriate public transit, that are going to lead toward people being able to get to their, health, making sure that healthcare is accessible. So there are a number of different things that people can really be engaged in that supports addressing blight, because it shows up in so many different ways. The fact that look, South Baltimore down on the water has more grocery stores from President Street to Canton Crossing in that footprint than all of West Baltimore combined. So when we look at those type of things, making sure the people, folks in your area can get to a grocery store, working with elders to make sure that that's happening, making sure that when Baltimore City Public School talks about closing yet another school, that we are raising our voices there. A lot of it has to do with, we have to be organized and we have to be engaging in the political process, even if it's not even if at all of the levels, right? From vetting candidates all the way up to holding the candidates, holding the elected officials accountable, and all of the steps in between. So there are many different ways that we didn't get to this place because of one policy. We got to this place because of a series of policies, and there isn't one solution. There are many places and spaces where people can get in where they fit in.
Nneka, how can people connect with you and support the great work that Fight by Bmore is doing to change these conditions?
Sure. So you can check us out on the web at www.fightblightbmore.com. We're also on Instagram as Project Blight to Bright. We're on Twitter as Fight Blight Bmore with no E, and we're on Facebook as Fight Blight Bmore all the way through. Now, one of the key things that people can do is, if you know someone who is a homeowner, or someone who is living in a home that presumably would be theirs, if their name was on a deed, an heir, and they are having issues with property taxes, water bills, environmental control board citations, home repairs, ground rent, any of those things, you can reach out to us at www.sosfund.com, and you can refer them. We have resources. We have access to state resources that we can help people clear these debts. We can help folks get their estate plan in order. We can help people challenge their tax assessments. So those are ways that people can get in contact with us and get involved.
Nneka, we want to thank you for being with us tonight. As always, it's a pleasure to link up with you, and we will be having you come back, because we do know that this is going to be an ongoing topic, and you have so much. I think you need to come back and give us a little bit more of a lesson on redlining, because people need to know the history. And I'm going to reach out to you tomorrow, and we'll find some more time to continue this conversation.
Sweet.
All right. Thank you, sis.
All right. See you.
All right, everybody. You on Live with the Chop Shop. We come to you every Thursday at 6 p.m. This is the show where the kingdom of God and the community collide, because they really are one. And our next guest is a prince in the kingdom of God. He's the mayor of Cherry Hill. I don't know, because him and Mike now, they might be working together. So he might be the co-mayor, the co-chair Cherry Hill, but he's a great man of God, one who I have the privilege and pleasure of learning from. People look at the work that I do in the community, and while he has his lane, I have my lane. I admire this man of God, his steadfastness and consistency, not only in building the kingdom, but making sure that economic development and that opportunity happens where God has graced him and established him is unlike anybody that I've seen really in a long time. I'm talking about the one and only pastor of South Church himself, my friend and my brother, Dr. Aaron Hanna. What's up, man?
Brother. I'm well, brother. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. When I got to really processing this, because we wanted to do this show around dealing with the conditions of community, I wanted to talk to you because, man, you have planted your flag and you are literally a key component in a lot of the great things that's happening in that shopping center right across the street from you. And to make sure that Cherry Hill gets a chance. But before we get to that, why don't you talk to the people a little bit about who Dr. Hanna is? I try to give great introductions, but I can't do what you say in the church. You can't tell it like I can.
Brother, one thing about you, your way with words and your desire to make sure others are lifted is always appropriate. It's always integral and is always on point. I couldn't say it any better. If I would say it any better, it wouldn't be right. And so, but what I am is, if you may not know, I'm a husband of 25 years, a granddad, a dad of two amazing children, and I pastor a beautiful church in Baltimore called South Church, and now I'm planning a beautiful church in New York and Brooklyn called Bodega. And I love my city. I love Baltimore, and it's a great place to be. And I'm encouraged to be able to lead whatever and steward whatever God has me doing. I'm grateful.
Man, that's amazing news. I don't know if it's breaking news here on our channel, but I take credit for it. We broke it here. New work happening in New York. You did tell me you were making some moves and doing some things there, man, and I'm definitely excited for you. That is a fruitful place to plant. And with what God has blessed you with in ministry, I know it's going to be amazing. But we're here tonight to talk about kind of that side. And I don't say the other side anymore, because this is who we are. We are not community and kingdom. We are kingdom, which is community. And brother, you do it better than anybody. And to know your voice in your hand and how it insists to make sure that it's not just about having church services in a building in Cherry Hill, but it's to make sure that the fullness of advancement, economic development, and all of those things are happening in the community that has been neglected or have been neglected for so long. I admire that about you. Talk to the people a little bit about your love and your passion for that community.
Well, Cherry Hill is where I was born and raised. And if you don't know, I currently live here. And so I'm grateful to be here. My children went to school here. I went to school here. My wife went to school in Cherry Hill. And I've owned and operated a business here for 20 plus years. And it was successful until we decided to do totally full-time ministry. We've always did full-time ministry, but just couldn't do full-time work because ministry outgrew our secular job. But even our secular positions, we were always doing ministry. It was a barbershop that we had for 20 plus years, and we stuck our foot in the ground, and that's where we really started ministry at. Most of my friends on my day-to-day action were Muslim, and they loved me and I loved them, and they were my guys. Most of my friends were also drug addicts, and I can't tell you how many NA meetings I've been in to be able to celebrate them. So I have during that time, a lot of them are clean now, some are not. They may have stepped back out there, but a lot of my friends initially in Cherry Hill, outside of my regular people I grew up with, were Muslim and drug addicts. And so these people I really love. And so outside of Christianity, it's because Christianity would suggest that we are just Christians, but we were originally called people of the way. And if Christ is the way, then we have to be an active way maker for whomever we're supposed to be way makers for. And so to limit ourselves to call us Christians would not be enough. We are people of the way. And so if he says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, if that is the case, I want to make sure that I'm always presenting the way. And so being in Cherry Hill, by the grace of God, he's allowed us to be the way or a door opener. And so we partner with so many people like Raheem Brown and the Cherry Hill Eagles. We've partnered with my sister Termite, partnered with Michael Battle, who's doing an amazing job. So all these people are definitely arms that hold up so many trees in what we consider Cherry Hill. I've pastored in Cherry Hill all my life, well, all my pastoral ministry has been done here as it relates to being a senior pastor. And pandemic changed a lot. We've always did evangelism every Saturday, food and clothes. We always would give the people with no grant assistance and not tooting our own horn, but just being stewards of what we've had. And we could not wait for a ministerial alliance. We could not wait for a group of people to agree. We had to just kind of do the work and to operate in an apostolic fashion, which means to have a function and not an office. Some persons can be ordained or consecrated in an office, and they will always have that title and will always have that office and could possibly stay in that office and never do a thing. But to operate apostolically is a function and not an office. And so if you're not functioning, then you can't be an apostolic. And so if you are the way, you should be an apostolic. You are an apostolic if you're functioning to provide Jesus to everybody. Jesus, I'm gonna say this and I'll let you go. Jesus says, well, a well man does not need a physician, because they were questioning the people that he was around. And when you are called to the city, the nation, the person, the people, the culture, and you're going to be that light, you're going to be called to very dark places. And you have to be brilliant in those places. So you got to be sharp, you have to be loving, you have to be caring. And if we're following God as the way and we're on this chop shop where kingdom and culture meet, then that's what we're doing.
I've had the pleasure of being able to come to 601 Cherry Hill Road and to see you in action. But I want to tell a little bit of the backstory. I was actually, through my Mayor's Office of Employment Development work, asked to attend, represent our agency at a job fair on the other side. The property company set up, and I remember talking to the gentleman who made arrangements, and they didn't have a good turnout. I said to him, "You ain't hook up with Mike and Pastor Hannah? Well, that's why you ain't have a good turnout. You didn't have the right people on your team." And we discussed it. And you said, "Well, man, look, I'm doing this food. Come on over here." And we began to bring the tent and the table right there where you were giving out the boxes of food, man. And when I talk about economic development, people don't really understand the power of simply giving somebody an opportunity. And we had tremendous success where I remember one specifically, a brother who I've known really for a long time, had a forklift certification, and with one phone call, he got a new job making $20 an hour right there on the spot. So when we talk about the economic development and bringing about the change, you're literally boots on the ground outside the four walls, all of those catchphrases that we hear. Talk to the people about why it's so important for you. And I know you love Cherry Hill, but I'm talking the life change aspect of it, why it's so important for you to make sure a person doesn't have to cross your door sill in order to get these resources.
Scripture says, above all, that we should prosper and be in good health. I want everybody to prosper. Now, be in good health and to prosper is two different types of prosperity. And yes, God wants us in health. Yes, he wants us to be healed. Yes, he wants us to be holistic, but he also wants us to have some bread, some ham, some cheese, and some Skrilla. That's called money.
Yes, sir.
And you can have all the home you want, all the peace you want, all the love and joy you want, but not have any money. It will cause you to be depressed, oppressed, anxiety-driven, and suicidal. Let you not have the bread. Not you let have the bread and the cheese. So this whole provision is the goal for us to be who we are. Scripture even says, I was hungry and you didn't feed me. I was naked and you didn't clothe me. So many ways that provision should be made. But we want to be able to, so Jesus even says this. He said, if you are, you can't worship, now you and I talked about this in Matthew 6, you can't worship God and mammon. And so sometimes we worship the lack of seeing provision. And we are enamored by not seeing provision, and we build altars at places where we don't see provision, and we don't even know it. We're crying at that place. We're devastated at that place. We're wounded at that place,
My
and we can't
God.
even move. And so we see the scenario and we're stunned, and then we stay there and we get overwhelmed and can't function. So our hands are lifted because we surrender. Our tears are coming down because we're crying, and we don't even know that we're worshiping the God of not seeing provision. Then you have to worship God or mammon. So that was mammon. So mammon is money of evil influence, which is us not seeing provision or either working overtime and still paying Uncle Sam and not getting no bread. But when you worship God, the same tears, but they're joy driven, those same hands get lifted and those same altars are built. So both of them are worship, but one of them is God and one of them is mammon, which is money of evil influence or the anxiety of not seeing provision. So by God's plan, he says, don't worry about your life, Matthew 6 and 24 and 25. Don't worry about your life. Don't worry about what you're going to wear. Don't worry about what you're going to eat. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, which is God's right way of thinking, and everything else you need shall be added unto you. It is by God's design that we not worry about our life and that we trust him and lean on him and depend. But if the people don't see the church being a type of giver or provider, they will shift somewhere else to gain provision, whether it be sex trafficking, whether it be getting a pack and selling drugs, whether it mean sticking somebody up. Now, maybe you're out in the county, maybe that's not your thing, but
Oh, it's unilateral now, Pat.
but guess what? Well, I'm just operating humility, but we know. But what happens is, and then I will be the city boy that will now go out to the county and snatch your grub and steal your car, or either I'll be the person from the city doing that, or then now you have even out there that people have these big houses, but they're house poor. So you'll be there and there is a need. And so we have to make sure that if we're going to be the church, or let me just speak for me, I decided if I'm going to be the church, I want to make such an impact that if I am not in my community, they should be saying, where are you?
My God.
If they're not saying, where is South Church? Where is Dr. Hannah? Where is Pastor Marvin? Then maybe we're not doing as much as we need to be this beacon of light. Maybe we are hiding the sanctuary, hiding our light to be that proverbial bushel basket. Maybe we're not brilliant and not bright because all we are is in the sanctuary. I'm not after anybody, but the sanctuary is a part of ministry. But there are additional ways if that is what you're called to. I have the grace for it. I didn't know it. But sometimes you got to go and try to see what you have the grace for. And I decided to try my hand to match the level of love. So when I come across a drug addict, I'm still calling him Mr., brother, sir, or ma'am, or possibly even call him big brother, to position himself to think of a way other than the cocaine, other than the pack, other than the pills, so they can be reminded that I am still a regular citizen. And this man of God, me, Aaron Hannah, they call me Rusty in the hood, is that I'm loving on you enough to jolt your mind because I want you to be holistically together. So in this thing, we have brought banks. I remember before pandemic, I would bring Wells Fargo to my church every Tuesday to open up bank accounts, so people in my hood would not be going down to cash this, go to the check cashing spot, put their thumb up, buy 3 Black and Milds, gamble their way on the horses, do XYZ, and then leave there. You had a whole check for 400, and then you leave it for what, 150, because the mentality of the check cashing spot. You know what I'm saying? And you did $50 worth of scratch offs, and now my economic development is going out of the window because I'm not developing you economically. So I got to pull you out of this place and place you where you didn't go. So since you don't go to the bank, let me show you how to open up an account. Well, hey, I'm on check systems. I've bounced some checks before. Haven't we all had a fee or two? And so that being said, let me show you how not to be embarrassed. And let me go, if you're a pastor, find the local banks in your neighborhood, go and find them and have them to come to your church, and then ask them, hey, can you do something for those persons that are on check systems, or those persons that owe negatively on accounts that have closed and they still owe, because it's a red flag. So when you do that, you make provisions. And guess what, pastor? Guess what, brother? Guess what, nonprofit organization? Guess what? You now get a leg in, because there was a need that you were trying to provide. You now build a relationship with the bank that you would have never ever dealt with outside of your checking. So now you have a relationship with the bank. And now guess what? When you get ready to buy your building, They might say, hey, we have some money for you. When you get ready to feed the homeless, hey, we have some money for you. Hey, you brought 30 accounts in here last month. Hey, you know what? Let's partner with you. And so now, because there was a need that you were taking care of and being their arms and the feet of Jesus, now you're about to be the voice because you decide to help somebody along the way. And I'm telling you, your living will never be in vain.
I want to talk to you because you touched another population and partnered another person with us, and we wound up being in their community doing this work. And that was a young lady who was a Black entrepreneur here in Baltimore. And I think that the entrepreneur community is one that we, first of all, in the kingdom aren't targeting enough. We don't particularly know as faith leaders how to support the entrepreneurs a lot of times that are in our own church. But as a connector, and we all know that you're a connector, I saw you bring the entrepreneur to the table, which expanded the great work that we were doing all the way into another community. Talk to us about the necessity that we really understand how to move if we're going to be kingdom, that we are reaching the Black entrepreneur, the entrepreneur in urban Baltimore and cities like this.
You may not know this, Pastor, but I have been self-employed since '94. I've been self-employed, I think, how many years is this now? At least over 20 years. My numbers are off. But I've been self-employed. I worked a regular job twice. I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners while I had me a stand selling clothes in East Baltimore. And I sweat my shirt out. I tried to sell vacuum cleaners, and the hood couldn't support it because their credit wasn't good, which made me think maybe we're not buying $1,500 vacuum cleaners in 1994. But what I do know is that my hood, by the mentality of being go-getters in our urban communities, man, we, believe it or not, are raised to be self-sufficient as persons. We've been persecuted, we've been tried, we've had the lesser of the stick or the end of the stick. And so necessity, glory to God, is the mother of invention. So because there's a need, something gets birthed. Alexander Graham Bell, he wanted to talk to someone and that wasn't inside his personage or his area. So he develops his phone. There are people right now that because there was a need, you go to an average house in the urban neighborhood, someone doing hair. Someone is curling somebody. Somebody got a curler on. It's our first barbershop. Some of our first hairdressers are inside of here, but no one is telling them that you can do this for yourself. They don't. No one is telling you that you don't have to go to school. You can go straight into a shop and just get under a master stylist or a master barber. You can do this. A lot of my following is on IG, and when you go to IG, you'll see lashes being sold. You'll see chicken dinners being sold. You'll see shrimp. You'll see a whole bunch of lamb chops. Lamb chops is popular in the urban community, right? You'll see all of this, and I've seen people during the pandemic go from selling dinners online to they say I sold out to 50 dinners to now having buildings and event halls. So I am telling
Goodfellas downtown.
Yeah, here we go, right? So I am telling you that you are, and even in the church, so most of the person that followed Jesus were entrepreneurs. They were tent makers. They did other things. They were fishermen. And so a lot of his disciples were actually entrepreneurs. So it is not foreign because when you have this place of being an entrepreneur, then you can normally do ministry in a different way. You're able to function on a day. You'll be at the call of your pastor. So you're able to serve other nonprofits. So being a entrepreneur and home ownership is super dopely important. So if I'm going to be what I am in the inner city, I am telling you, if you can sell drugs, you can sell bottled water. I am telling you, if you can do hair in your house, then you can go to Beijing and don't go to Dubai and try to be cute and say we went to Louis Vuitton store. That's all fine and done. You go ahead and do that. But I would rather you could go to Beijing and then meet with the manufacturer, and then you can start making those frontals and saying what this is and saying what that is. I'm telling you, you can go on Alibaba tonight and go and you can communicate with people in Asia at 3 a.m. on your time. And they will send you samples of sweatshirts and hair. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a hustler, baby. I'm telling you, this is what. And so because of this, you can get your butt up and you can make this happen. And let me tell you this, and I walk out and you tell me what I got to do next. What I will say is, if you are an entrepreneur, no, starting, you might not make $100,000 a year. No, you might not make $50,000 a year, but you can still work your regular job, and you'll be able to get your business going enough that it pays at least your car note, $500, and then it's paying your cell phone bill, $300, and then it's paying your rent, $1,000. And that's you know, all of what you're doing is being paid. So you buy your small business or your spirit of an entrepreneur, so it can get done. So don't look to make $100,000 from the beginning. Look to pay your cell phone bill, and then look to pay your insurance. And then that's one thing your check is not taking. And now you got some additional monies. So being an entrepreneur will allow you to maneuver. And if you're going to be kingdom, my goodness, you ought to expect to see increase. You ought to expect to see wealth. And all of this is because of God's principles. Be diligent in whatever it is that you do so God can owe you.
Dr. Hannah, I wanted to ask you this, and I always like kind of what your response is, because you have kind of carved out your own lane. And one of the things that you never do is I love about your teaching is you teach principles. You don't teach from a position of identity. You're not trying to make it about how you dress, how you talk, all of those kinds of things, but that these applied principles that you teach. And I'm telling you, I'm talking about, I remember the diverse room when it was me, you, Mike Battle, and all, while all of us may have similar roots, where God has taken us as, you know, I'm in government, Mike is in human services, you the pastor, right? But the principles were so universal that it did not matter, right? And for people to not think that they're going to put on some jeans and a t-shirt and stand in the pulpit and going to get a result based on identity, but to really understand that it's important to be and understand who God has called you and made you to be. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, being what God called you to be is very important, because you'll be someone else. You know, my thing was, initially I thought I was going to be a politician. Initially I thought I was going to do so many other things besides pastor. Me being who I am, this individual, this thing, this principle, the scriptures freed me. Pastor, I don't even listen to secular music at all. But every sermon has almost a secular snippet of a song. Just like talking to you, I'm a hustler, baby. You know, we gonna mess up tonight. Like these are moments that God will download to make sure I am relevant to the culture. And I'm telling you, as he told Moses, if you open up your mouth, I'll speak for you. We have to be who God has called us to be, and we have to be comfortable for that. I got enough word in me where it freed me from the thoughts of men. So you're not going to just eliminate the thoughts of men. It's going to be word that will make you find when you lose yourself in God, you will find the kingdom identity. Glory to God. If you lose yourself in God, you will come up as the greatest of who you are. And there will be times where people will say, what are you? What are you doing? What does he think he's doing? But stay consistent, because there are people that will look at you until they figure you out. But the fruits of whatever it is that God has called you to do will be the biggest apples, the shiniest watermelon, and the most luminous lemon, and the most yellowest of bananas. And when you do this, if you be yourself, you're going to see fruit from this. Let me tell you what being yourself will be. Being yourself, me being myself, has allowed me during the pandemic to see over 2,500 plus persons be saved. Being myself, we've seen the likes of 40 people at 8 a.m. give their life to Jesus. Being myself has given us the platform to be able to see 1,000 people at 8 a.m. Watch this, weed smoking, lamb chop eating, lash having, used car selling, count out kind of folks that you would never think is in church will come in when you are the realist of who you're supposed to be. If you take out your personal opinion and puts God's thoughts in this thing, it is going to work. One of the things I found out is that the Spirit of God has principles that hover the earth, that function. Like, for example, the year of the Lord's release is what happens in Deuteronomy when they have to release you from 7 years of debt. And we keep thinking it's Uncle Sam. Sam ain't got nothing to do with this. It is by God's design and God's principles that they release you from 7 years of debt. That Bible is what hovers and moves and functions through this earth. So if you want to be relevant, stay godly. I'm telling you, if you want to be relevant, stay godly. If you want to be real, stay godly. If you want to be functionable, stay godly. If you want to be paramount, stay godly. And if you stay before God and lose yourself in him, he will make you will realize who you are in him. And that's where you want your identity to be. So in my church, yes, you're going to see LGBT community. In my church, are you going to see drug dealers? Yes, you are. In my church, are you going to see whores? Yes, you are. In my church, will we see government officials? Yes, you are. Heaven is going to look like everybody that's authentic. And if you are authentic and you come before him boldly, as he says, and you take on his name, he's going to present you faultless so you can be authentic on the earth. And not only is he going to present you faultless, the Bible says that he's going to present you faultless with exceeding joy. He's going to have more than enough joy to point out, watch this, that all I see is Aaron Hannah flawless, because that's how I'm presenting him through Christ Jesus. And so this is where my identity realizes that I have someone greater than I. So I am Aaron Hannah, Jesus. You are Marvin, McKenstry, Jesus. Your name that you have attached to you gives you an identity that will get you in any door and close some that you don't need to walk through. Be lost in him, and you'll find the best version of you.
Dr. Hannah, I want to thank you for being with us, man. Every time you come on, you drop jewels and nuggets, principles. You're a man of principle, and I love the way that you articulate the principles of God. Thank you for being with us, and definitely, you're going to be coming back. As always, you've been a friend of this show. You've been a friend of me, man, and I honor God for giving me such a brother, a big brother, man of God, and a man of wisdom. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Brother, I love you. It's always a joy to be with you. Your character, your aspect, your thoughts, you are provoking, and you're called to do what you're doing. Thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so much. All right, y'all. I want to thank our other guests tonight as well, Miss Nneka Nnamdi, who came on Fight Blight Baltimore. Y'all remember, support the work, support the work, support the work. As always, I got to thank my right hand and my left hand, Mr. Shaka Pitts on the ones and twos, making the magic happen. Tech these 1200s, because anything else is uncivilized. Y'all see it on Sunday. We're going to be having an Advent celebration with 4 of the leaders in our church, Elder Ronetta Cooper, Elder Dee Hagins, Elder Mary Powell, and Pastor J.O. Thomas. I'm going to get to sit down and yell at them, preach, 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 as we celebrate the arrival of the Messiah in the season which we celebrate the arrival of Messiah. Next week, y'all, we got coming up before you, we're going to have my main man, Mr. T.J. Smith is going to be with us. And we're going to have on the back end of that show, he's going to be coming on talking Baltimore, former mayoral candidate, former spokesperson for the Baltimore City Police Department, and a son of Baltimore who loves Baltimore, whose life has been impacted, lost his little brother to murder. And we're going to be talking about Baltimore. This is going to begin our 2-year review shows. And we're going to have on here with him the overseer himself, the thinker of thugs, thinkers of theologians. Overseer Clavon Burston is going to be with us, y'all. And we're going to be really looking from a godly perspective at what is happening as we approach the transition in the year. Y'all going to want to be with us these next couple of weeks, because the week after that, we got Sheila Dixon coming on. And, of course, with that show, I'm going to have our Pastor Shelley Burton, close us out for the year, y'all. So y'all make sure that y'all are here. I always encourage you to trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, and all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Be the change you want to see. If you are in that community, that job, that neighborhood, that school, that church, don't run when things get tough. You stand flat-footed and be what's needed. As he said, necessity is the mother of invention, even if it means releasing what God has invented in you to be about that change that's necessary. I want you to make sure that you're an impact person and not a runner. And above and beyond everything else, always make sure that you remember we can be more. Thank you for being with the Chop Shop. We'll see you next week.